Everyone, good morning to those on the West Coast. My name is Jeannie Borum, and I will be the facilitator for our session today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time or may not have watched a previously recorded session, just a really quick overview of what to expect for the next hour. First off, we're going to be doing an introduction of the current owners that are on the call today. They'll providing a little bit of background about themselves, their business, where they're located, and some details. So you get to better understand a little bit more about them. And then we're going to turn the floor over to you all as our participant attendees and give you an opportunity to ask our panelist a question. We do ask you to keep it to a single question each time you're called upon, just to give everyone a chance to at least ask one question with the time permitted today. If we do have time towards the end, we may be able to allow you to have a second question, but we do ask you to keep it to one to start with. So with that said, let's turn our floor over to introduce you to our owners who will be our panelists and answering the questions today. I'll go ladies first, and with one of our newer owners, Jamie, can you give us an introduction of your business today and a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to go off the list that Sheree gave me to introduce myself. Our business, Saltwater Snacks, we are located in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is in the balmy beach area. We have been in business for a whopping 15 months. Our facility, we started in a 1,200 square foot space that was not at all ideal, but with Jack's urging after looking for 7 months, we took that and just made it work. And then we had an amazing opportunity fall in our laps in June last year, and we had to jump on it. So we are currently in a 4,200 square feet space, which is allowing us a lot of opportunity to grow. We have 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time, and then my husband, Ben, and I both work full-time in the business. We are down 2 people right now, so it's been a fun ride this past week. Our projection sales for this year are $1 million. We're trying to double what we did in our first year. Our biggest customer and project recently completed was a 34 vehicle fleet for $80,000. And background career, I worked in the, thank you. I worked in the restaurant industry for a really long time, actually loved everything about that. And then my first grown-up job was a corporate trainer with Wachovia Bank for many years. And I adored that too, until I retired to stay home with our children. My husband, Ben, is not able to be on the call with us today, but his background is a mechanical engineer by degree, but nuclear engineer by trade. He worked in the nuclear industry for about 20 years in manufacturing and things like that. So
wonderful. Glad to hear you today. Thank you, Jamie, for that introduction. All right, let's go to our next owner to introduce themselves. Sergio, if you can take yourself off of mute and go ahead with your introduction for the group today.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I'm a little frazzled just getting in. And I think I caught most of that. So yeah, I'm Sergio. I own Influence Signs and Graphics, and we are based in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, the world. So this is also known as America's Hat. I've been in operation for 4 years. So we work backwards, and that's March 2020. So possibly the worst time you can open a brick and mortar. I did that, and that was great. We won't talk about that anymore. I have 2,000 square feet facility. We have all the equipment that we would have got through Signworld, but we also have a CNC laser and a router. My projections for this year is about around $1 million. We did about 800,000 last year. 85% of our business is referrals, repeats. So I'm pretty fortunate that way. I have some pretty big clients that continue to feed us. My background is predominantly in management, project management, business development. So most of my time spent prior to owning the business was working for a company called Electronic Arts, and I was working in digital advertising. So I was working with Fortune 500 companies, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Adidas, etc., to put the ads into video games or around video games, if that makes any sense. And then prior to that, I did a small stint selling billboards. So I did a bit of print as well. So that sort of kind of led me to this path. And sort of what solidified my Signworld agreement was Dan Warner's teeth, the whitest teeth you'll ever see.
Very good. Thanks for being on the call today, Sergio. Appreciate that.
No problem.
All right. Our last current owner on the call for the panelist, Roger Carroll. Please give an introduction.
Hi there. Is the audio working?
Yep, we can hear you just fine.
Terrific. Okay. Name of my business is Cowtown Graphics and Signs. You can see it on the sign there.
Mhm.
And I'm located in the DFW metro market of the state of Texas. We've been in business for 10 years. Facility is 10,000 square feet. I'll give you the way we graduated. We started 2,500, doubled down about 5 years after that to 5,000. And then 3 years after that, doubled down to 10,000. Facility is now 10,000 square feet. We have over 20 employees. It kind of fluctuates, but typically between 20 and 24. Our 2024 sales projection is $2.5 million. Our biggest customer here recently was a 315 apartment complex in Webster, Texas. So we do get out of town every once in a while. Linux Bayside was worth about 90 grand. And that's exterior signs, interior signs, ADA, all that kind of stuff. Let's see. My background career, I spent 20 years in apparel sales.
Very good. Thank you, Roger. And to round out our panelists today, Jack, can you give a quick introduction to the group?
Hey everybody, my name is Jack Werner. I joined Signworld in 1995 as a operation, started in 1,100 square feet with one employee. Ended up 10 years later in 5,000 square feet, staff 11, doing about 1.3 million in revenue. My largest customer was a regional developer for Subway that did about $250,000 per year because Subway keeps changing their logo every 4 years. I then sold that operation to go into a partnership with Ken Kien, our founder of Signworld, finished buying him out in 2014. I'm now the president of Signworld. So when I answer questions today, depending on the question, if it goes to my experience, that I'll talk that way. If it goes to training policy, I'll talk that way. If it goes more to the whole community, I might speak from that perspective. My background before Signworld was running a wholesale food distribution company. So nobody in Signworld has sign experience. We all come from different backgrounds and different walks of life.
Although I just heard Sergio say he had billboard experience. I think he's the first owner I've ever heard talk about billboards in our business. So great stuff. All right, well, now the fun begins. We're going to turn the floor over to our attendees, our guests today. I'm going to call you by name. And when I do, if you can take yourself off of mute, tell the group where you're from geographically, and then go ahead with the question. I'm going to go based on order of when you joined. So Chris Hudson, if you can take yourself off of mute, we got you up first.
And I'm going to cheat because I'm going to defer my question to Mike DeWeese, who's also on the call. So Mike, you are the ones with your questions. So go ahead. And
All right.
time at the end, I'll go back and I'll ask.
Sounds great, Chris. Mike, go ahead.
So I was curious, Jamie, I believe it took you a long time to find a location. What took so long to find a location for you?
Great question. So we actually incorporated in April of 2022, and we did enlist the help of a person with Signworld named Rich to help find our space. What was interesting and I guess kind of unique for the time was that because of COVID, a lot of retail spaces realized that they could pivot and still keep their business moving, but they didn't need to pay the square footage prices that went along with retail space. So what happened here is that a lot of retail folks moved into warehouse space or flex space, which is what we were looking for. And so the bottom line is there was more demand than there was supply. And so we were feeling a bit discouraged, and Jack, like I said, encouraged us to start thinking outside the box and looking for not like the space, but looking for a space that could possibly work. So that's kind of, I don't know if that was unique to our location or not, or just the timing, but that's what took us so long.
And Jamie, when did you then transfer to the current space you have today? It was about 7 months in that original space, or a little bit longer?
Yes, we moved in July of 2023.
Okay, perfect. And to your current home. Sergio, why don't you talk about finding your location? How did that work for you?
It wasn't that bad in our market. It wasn't really that challenging. I mean, you obviously have to look for the right location strategically. Where do you want to be located? So I'm in sort of an industrial area, so I don't have any foot traffic, which I like. I probably had 5 visitors. And my model's ready. I just drive to my clients. So Yeah, for us, it was okay. It's a very expensive market. I'm paying for 2,000 square feet. I'm paying now $5,200 a month, and it's going to go up to $6,500 a month next year. So it's expensive. That's probably the one thing I could share with the Vancouver market. But as far as finding places, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, disadvantage of the Canadian market. I know all of you up there pay a lot more for rent than us do here in the US. So thanks for sharing. Roger, how about you? You talked about your evolution starting at 2,500, then to 5, then to 10. How'd you find your first location? How'd you find your second? Talk a little bit about that a little bit more.
Well, it took a really long time, and I find that that most people do. It took longer than I thought it might, but at the same time, Rich was very good. Rich Arias was a real help, and eventually you just literally, if you're active enough and you look enough and you've been, you keep at it. One day you walk in, and there's the space, and there's the dollars, and it seems to make sense to you, and it's at the right location. For us, it was more so of being in the crux of, or the crossroads of, a number of different highways, because we got a lot of towns here in the DFW Metro. And the key to the program in terms of time on the road is getting on the road quickly and getting to where you want to go quickly. So we were looking more not towards the actual space so much as the location, in terms of how we could get on a highway to go see a client. So it was kind of different for us. I don't know if it was different. It's probably the same for everybody, but literally one day you walk in, you go, yep, I'm done.
Okay. Jack, what's your comments?
We have had struggles in cases, but the normal is a 3 to 4 month period to find a location. A real estate attorney has been part of our team for 30 years. We'll show you all the buildings that we think are viable. You'll do walkthroughs to pick your favorite. We'll coach you, but not control you. Our attorney then will do all the lease negotiation. He's very good at that. He'll do all the legal, making sure you're not signing a lease that you should. But I think most Signworlds will tell you, even the ones that took a little bit longer, we're probably processing some projects along the way, outsourcing it to others just to get the ball rolling.
And starting the training and getting the website created and all the other activities while you're waiting for that too. Absolutely. Very good. All right, let's go to our next participant for a question. Josh, if you can take yourself off of mute, tell the group where you're from and go ahead with your question today.
Yeah, hello, my name's Josh Self. I'm from Southern Oregon, Jacksonville, Oregon, specifically. Been working with Jack talking about this opportunity, and thanks for the invite. One question I have kind of related to the brick and mortar conversation, and Roger, thanks. That was a good point. I'm just being adjacent or somewhat close to your client base is probably very critical. I have a unique circumstance where I own a shop. I have 10 acres. I got some space, yet it's not quite so close to my market. So I'm asking, really, how important is that brick and mortar in that space from a customer relations standpoint? And is it worthwhile jumping in and getting product off the ground and running versus being in a location?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's also thinking about the employee side of the business too, and hiring, people to work for you and where they're coming from. So let's start with you, Roger, since you're in go ahead, Jack.
Just a quick thing to just help everybody with it. Josh, you're what, about 18 miles out of Medford?
Yeah, pretty close. 15-20 minute drive. Yeah.
So, and I don't know, is that to the edge of town or is that to the center of town?
That would be to like the industrial complex area. Yeah, right to the edge. I mean, it's not a giant place. We say everything's 20 minutes here.
So, but for most of the community, getting to customers from your building is probably what, 10 miles?
Yeah, Roger, what would you say is the average time to get to visit your customers?
Oh, no more than 15 to 30 minutes, something like that.
Okay. So as far as location for Josh, do you recommend that he locate closer to Medford and not be as far out remote rurally, or what's your thoughts on that?
We've got a lot of employees that are away from our location physically. Doesn't seem to bother them. And what I did was I kind of picked a place. I'm on the west side of Fort Worth, and you got Fort Worth and you got Dallas. So what I was trying to do is kind of split the difference in the middle there. So our location is actually on the east side of Fort Worth. And that has kind of put us in a centrally, because I'm going at the same time, I'm going east and west on the main interstates. Okay. And then, the DFW area goes way to hell up north, which will be in Frisco when we go to the convention. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to be, and if it's not where I live, I actually live on the west side of town. So it worked out fine.
Okay. Sergio, what would you say? How important is to be closest to your customers?
I think for us, so it's an interesting question. So my lease is up next year, so I may renew or may look for a bigger facility. And so what I would do, and maybe this is what I would also recommend, is you may want to have your facility. You can have a facility further away in the boonies, if you want to call it that. But I think strategically, from a marketing perspective, you may want to invest in a satellite office in a spot where it's hopping. So, for example, I'm in Burnaby, which is a municipality right beside Vancouver. It's only 15 minutes away, sort of like touching each other. But I might move out to Langley because I can get more per square foot, have production happen there. But I may just get a satellite office at WeWorks or something like that, and have my head office based in Vancouver because that's where most of the business is. And so I think there is a perception that I receive sometimes for like, oh, you're in Burnaby, you're kind of still far away. And it's like, well, no, I'm in Vancouver. So I think that's something you need to consider as well.
And you're
of course,
saying
people.
You're saying that more for the Google advertising and getting the customer leads generated as well.
Yeah, because I mean, downtown Vancouver has, my target market is high rises, that's where all the high rises are. That's where the contractors are. So if I'm based 2 hours away, I'm less likely to get that business, even if I'm prepared to go there. They're just less likely to pick up the phone. So I think strategically, from a market perspective or SEO, paid ads, I think be where you want to be, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have your production facility there.
Yep. Very good. Jamie, your thoughts?
I was just going to say that we are in an industrial park, so it worked out well for us with the warehouse space and the roll-up doors, and it was already 2 units that were combined and conditioned, so it was kind of a no-brainer for us to move here for all of those positives. We've had customers who are, right around the corner. The industrial park itself has been a really good lead opportunity for us. We've done a lot of work with those tenants. And then we go as far as there's a lot of growth going. We're on the coast, so there's no more land obviously around in Wilmington. So a lot of things are getting rezoned and built up with mixed use. So the 2 counties surrounding us are about a 15, maybe 30-minute drive, depending on if you're going to the far links. And we have not had any issues in getting business or, found that our location hurt us in any way, I guess I should say. We also don't have foot traffic. Like, we really are a B2B. We focus mostly on all commercial. So we don't have people coming to pick up their items or dropping by to ask, questions as far as like, can you make this sign or make this sign? So I wouldn't say it didn't bother us.
Okay, very good. Jack, any additional comments?
Just to not to take too long on Josh's question to get to everybody else, but for each of you, realize that he has a building with free rent right now. So would that sway you to use that as opposed to going to the industrial park 20 minutes away and renting space?
I see Jamie nodding, Roger nodding,
Yes.
Sergio nodding. So yes, use your free rent.
Yeah.
All right, very good. We'll move on to the next question here. Ravi, if you can go ahead and take yourself off mute and go ahead with the question for the group today.
Yeah, this question is for Roger. I'm from Houston, Texas, and really trying to get into this business. And I have a lot of manufacturing experience as well. The question to you is, how long it took you to break even on the business in the beginning days, at least for your investment and for the business you are getting? How long it took? Did it take 6 months, 1 year?
I would say it took between 1 year and 2 years, somewhere in.
If you don't mind, let me clarify the question, because sometimes this is many different ways. I just want to make sure we all have like a standard, approach to this. So when were your sales covering the expenses of your business, where you were cash positive and not needing to invest your own monies to make sure you're covering your bills?
Probably end of year 2.
End of year 2?
Yeah.
And How about you, Jamie?
Sorry, I keep wanting to make sure I'm muted. I feel like we were profitable by month 5, was our goal on that one. And I feel like it's either month 4 or month 5. I can't exactly remember.
Okay. And how about you, Sergio?
Year 3, and I started at the first time, so it was a dogfight, and out in the Canadian market didn't really give me a lot of support financially. So the first 2 years were definitely lost. I lost a lot. Year 3, I got to at the end of year 3, I was breaking even.
Okay. Jack, any comments on that as far as the
Our
averages?
our average is 6 months for cash positive.
Mhm. And again, that's cash positive where the expenses are being covered by the sales, not necessarily when you're paying yourself back your initial investment. That usually takes quite a bit of time to do that, and how you do that, every owner does it differently. And it also depends if you're taking an owner salary. Some owners, when they are talking about when they became cash positive, it's also, are they incorporating a payment to themselves, and they're not covering that yet either. So it's a great question, and there's lots of, unique answers, and just want to make sure we simplify that. Roger, as far as your 2 years, when you think back to, your
No,
growth.
I was covering off expenses probably just after the end of the first year. I'm talking about making a little money on the other one too. So yeah.
Yeah, that's why I always
It'd
like to
take me 2
clarify.
years. Yeah, I wasn't losing money for 2 full years. So
Yeah. Okay.
My question was more towards covering the expenses. Okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Robbie. Thanks for asking. All right, let's go to our next participant. VJ, if you can take yourself off and mute, tell the group where you're from, and go ahead with the question.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm VJ, and I'm a mechanical engineer, and I'm somewhat similar to Ravi, like what he said. So I've had several manufacturing experiences for 32 years. Now I'm just planning to go independent, and this sign world gave me a lot of aspects of positive, attractive things. So I'm kind of related to this field. So that is one reason I wanted to jump in here. Now, my question is, after all my training, I'm just a baby toddler now. So my question is, so after all the training and all the investment, initial investment and franchise document signing, like you all guys, it all happened to you all guys one day. So where am I going to be day 1, the week 1, and in the next 6 months? So how should I prepare myself for that?
And are you referring to the knowledge as far as learning the business? I don't want to make sure we're understanding the question.
Knowledge, it's just running the business. So day 1, so do I have to go in to market to look for a business? And the week 1, where am I? And after a week and a month and 6 months, I know where I should be, and I will be there. So what are all your experiences there?
Yeah, great question. All right, well, guys and gals, Jamie, thinking back to day 1, what were you and Ben doing in the business as owners, and what are you doing a little bit, now that you've been in the journey a little longer? Where is your focus?
Okay, I was hoping I was understanding the question. So day 1, we were trying not to panic, and we were hitting the gas as hard as we could go, and really just reaching out to all of our personal network, our professional network. A lot of our business has come because we have such a large network in our area and are very connected. We also joined chambers. We joined networking groups. BNI is one that has really been beneficial to us. Another one called Crew. And many different, like I said, chambers of commerce have helped. We also launched our website before we actually found our location, which was another terrifying thing, because we were like, oh my gosh, what if the odds are you're not going to get 75 leads a day when you first put your website out there. So we took that advice from Signworld and from the marketing partner that we chose. And I'm glad that we did that. And then we did paid ads from the very beginning. We are working a lot in the business when we first started, and then we got a little bit of a reprieve, but we are now down 2 positions. So we are working in the business every single day and still trying to maintain those networking functions, because that's really been the lifeline of our business, is developing relationships and getting those referrals.
Great answer. Thank you, Jamie. Roger, going back 10 years, how was it the first day, month, and how's it changed?
the first day, I'm looking for somebody who knows how to build a sign. So I focused entirely on getting the right person. I think I got lucky because that right person is still with me today, 10 years from ago. But he knew it all. I mean, he knew how, how to get the signs permitted, how to get them, because we were also doing electric signs right off the bat because he had an electrical background. Of course, we did all the things that, the banners and the vinyl signs and the ACM and all those kinds of things. We did all that, absolutely, and a lot of it. But we actually sold an electric sign off of our dining room tables before we even got the space that we got, the 2,500 square feet. So I was looking for a guy because I didn't have that. On the other hand, what I was doing, okay, as he was, working on the products, I joined the Chamber of Commerce. I joined a local civic group, which I still belong to today, which we had a meeting today. And fully, the first 2 years of full, I would say 50 to 60% of my business came from leads that came out of those networking groups. And at the same time, we put together a website and started getting that going too. But the thing I worried about most was getting the guy to build the sign once I sold it. And then I just started selling it. Once I had him, I just started cooking. So that's sort of how we bootstrapped it up.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Sergio, how about you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So sort of a lot of different ways I can answer that. I'd say from a marketing perspective, day one, I was leaning into my personal networks. Because again, I came from an digital advertising perspective. So I had some good connections. I certainly had to dump some money into paid ads, at least that first little bit, because at the end of the day is you have a website, you have default, creative. It doesn't really evoke a lot of confidence because it doesn't, you need to build up your gallery. So paid ads were a big focus. Personal network was a big focus. And I think really quite the most important thing, first step, is hire someone experienced as your first employee. I mean, it was tough for me again, not to cry, but during COVID, we didn't have the employment market was nothing. So it's better, much better now. But I made the mistake hiring quick and firing slow. So I would say hire somebody with experience, pay for that experience. Having that first employee is vital for first step to make sure you're hitting quality and you have somebody who knows what the heck is going on.
Great. Thank you.
Jack, any additional comments with that?
There's just a lot of things to wrap your arms around, from going through training to getting your website going to joining the local chamber and networking groups to get your thing out there, to reaching out to your contacts, hiring the employee. But we've got a Gantt chart to help you work through all those tasks and do all those things. And there's no doubt there's a lot of activities going on, but it's a fun time in life.
Yep.
Finally getting to be your own boss.
Yep.
Very good. Jack, you want to start the slideshows really quick in the background while we continue with questions?
Let me introduce 3 slideshows. There's no audio to these, so they'll just go on visually in the background while we're talking. The first one goes to showing some of the locations inside and out, so you can see what facilities look like. The second one goes to what is a sign, not only what can be made with the initial equipment, also what can be outsourced, as well as some things that you might even not consider a sign, just kind of understanding the breadth of what we do. The third one goes to the Wall of Fame, showing some of the larger projects that Signworld Owners have done. So while we start off with simpler things, we move on to more complicated projects.
All right, very good. And again, those will continue with no sound, so we'll continue with questions. Tony, if you can take yourself off of mute, tell the group where you're from and go ahead with the question.
Yes, hello. I'm Tony Ramos. I am wrapping up a career in the military near Nashville. There's a base here, Fort Campbell, and my wife and I have been here for about 10 years. Yeah, my wife is actually the one who has a little bit of experience in graphic design and making signs of different degrees, or sorry, the design part anyway, not actually fabricating them. And I guess I would call myself a project manager within the military, just working in small teams, doing all kinds of stuff in the military for the last 20 years. And I'm just getting ready to wrap up. But my question today, and I have a lot of questions, a lot of good information that's getting put out here. But I think the question that is kind of particular for me is I've already started looking at places that would potentially make sense, at least right here in Clarksville, where we currently live near Nashville. And the best place that I have found is actually very in close proximity to another sign company. It's a Fast Signs, and I know that they serve like a lot of storefront walk-ins, but they do a fair amount of medium-sized business too, I think. And I was just curious about concerns about proximity to other sign companies when you start off, if that's a hindrance or a benefit. I know the sign industry seems to be, I mean, it's competitive, but there's also like an element of cooperation that seems to take place. So yeah, just curious about the input there.
Yeah, it's a great question. There's always a sign company everywhere you look. So it doesn't matter if you're in Clarksville or Seattle or any other market. And it's also a very common concern, especially for people who are looking at this business because of that. So let's have Jamie rewind back to when you were in your discovery process, realizing how many sign companies there were out there. How did you feel confident moving forward, as well as are there sign companies close to you, and do you view them as competition?
Okay, well, you might remember, Jack, that I thought Ben was having a nervous breakdown when he mentioned sign company. And I was like, I can think of 5 sign companies right off the top of my head. And then I started doing the discovery process and all the things. And we learned that I think it's 98% of signs are indoors. So like when you look at all the signs that you see driving all around, that's only a small fraction of the signs. So there are probably 4 major players here in Wilmington. Some have been established for 12 years. Another one's like a 20-year-old company doing big dollars, big things, has bucket trucks, all the things that we do not have. But we also have some traditional franchises like Signorama, Fast Signs. Our first location, I should say, was probably 2 miles from Signs by Tomorrow. And then our new location is less than a mile from one of the biggest players in Wilmington. All I will say is that I think that there's plenty of business for everybody, and that not everyone is going to be everybody's cup of tea, so to speak. So we just work hard to provide exceptional service. One of the things Jack said to us in Discovery was basically, do your homework, call your competitors and put in an order for a sign or a request for a quote, and then wait for them to call you back. And we didn't really get any return phone calls. So that boosted my confidence a lot. And people to this day will say, I sent out a request or I called 3 places and you're the only one that called me back. So we just try to execute excellent service. We try to make sure we always answer the phone. We respond within, hours if we can to a request for a quote that comes in. And I find that I don't have time to worry about the competitors. I've met several of them and introduced myself. Some of them have been really friendly and others have been a little standoffish, but we all play in the same sandbox, and we're doing fine. I'm sure they're doing fine since we've started as well. So I wouldn't worry about the competition.
Okay, very good. Sergio, how about you? And I know this is a tough one considering you're in the Canadian market during COVID, but how was it getting started? How'd you look at the competition? How do you think about it now?
Yeah, I think it's natural to feel a little wheezy when you look around on Google Maps and see how many sign shops are in any given area. But at the end of the day, if you're B2C, it may be a concern, like if you're working downtown doing small stuff. But if you're B2B, I don't think it really has an impact. And a lot of that should be centered around your marketing strategy and how you go about Google Ads and SEO work. So I've got probably 3 within like 6 block radius. So, and I've met them too, and they're pretty good. And there's actually one that I've worked in collaboration on a project. So it was a bigger concern for me before I started. It's not a concern now.
Okay, very good. Roger, how about you?
I think, as Sergio said, it seems to be a concern when you're first getting in. But after you're in for a while, you realize that a lot of these folks are very collaborative. I'm collaborative. I'll help you if I can. And I find that that very few, I would say, I don't know, probably the lion's share of the sign owners and companies that I run into and become aware of, we end up being collaborative. Okay, they've got a flatbed printer, I don't. or I do electric signs, they don't. And we tend to swap back and forth on each other's strengths. And I think the collaborative nature of that dynamic is more valuable than the fear of people being competitive, because those people you just ignore, you know. They're not your friends. They're never going to be your friends. They're old school and blah, blah, blah. And again, it comes down to how do you respond to the contacts who do reach out and find you? How do you differentiate yourself between the other guys? And that's the biggest factor in your success. I mean, there are new companies coming into the DFW area all the time. And if you do all the right things, they're fine. They're successful. I don't notice them necessarily, you know, and it doesn't hurt my business. So.
Very good. Jack, your thoughts?
You know, I had 10 within a mile of my location, and I looked at it as opportunity. If there's that many out there, there's got to be a lot of business. Otherwise, why are they there? If I show up for the appointment, I'll get the business. Jeff Miller in Chicago will tell you that he can throw a rock over his back fence and hit another sign company. He'll tell you there's another sign company at the end of his block. He'll tell you when he gives directions to somebody coming to him, that if you get off the freeway at a certain exit, he'll be the fourth sign company you get to. If you come to Discovery Day and go to see Scott and Edith Hoffman, the closest competitor is 2 doors away and not competitive. So
yeah.
Competition out there, but it's not an issue.
Very good. All right, let's go to our next guest. Lawrence, if you can take yourself off of mute and tell the group where you're from and go ahead with the question for today.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Lawrence Baxter. I'm based in Apex, North Carolina. My background is radically different from anything like this, so I come at it basically learning everything for the first time. I was an e-commerce guy and a lawyer and a professor. So forgive me if the questions are naive, but most of the ones that I had are actually answered through this excellent conversation. But there are different pieces of it that I would like to ask about. The first is, I take away that the key hire right at the beginning is a good sign person who's got considerable experience, and I get that. That sort of helps to reduce the amount of fear in me if I can find one, and I know that Signworld helps on that. But how does the design as opposed to the technical implementation break down? Do you all have graphics designers? Do you outsource it? Do your clients come to you with a pre-developed sign theme? Or does it mean, in fact, that it's not just one person, but probably a graphic expert as well, a graphic design expert as well? So that's one question. I've got others, but I'll stop at that point.
All right, let's start with that one. And that's a very good question. You know, it's a key requirement to successfully launch a sign company, to make sure you have that experienced employee that can do it all, from design to production to installation. So Jamie, talk about your first hire. What were their capabilities? What did they do? And how did you find them?
Our first hire was kind of a well-rounded jack of all trades when it came to the sign industry. We found him through Indeed job posting after we interviewed probably 4 or 5 people, and we're starting to feel a little bit discouraged. But he was able to do design. He was also very creative and good with his hands, so he was able to build stuff. He could do installs. So we really felt like we hit the jackpot with him. And he helped us, you know, I feel like our first year, a lot of that was kind of built because of him. What I'll tell you is that the person that gets you to the first stage is not always going to be the person that takes you across the finish line. And unfortunately, we had to make a tough decision last year after probably several months worth of coaching. What we had learned is that the volume that we were taking on and then adding people to our team, that person was not able to adjust to the role of working with others. So, and then leading in that production manager role. So we did have to let him go. But you know, in the beginning, it was really helpful to have somebody that had all of that knowledge. And currently we have a sign maker who is able to do installs and has graphic design, but we actually have a company called, oh my gosh, why did I just lose it? SignPack, which we were introduced through to introduced to through Signworld, and they are an outsourced design firm for us. It's basically like we have a full-time designer. We pay an unlimited, we have an unlimited membership to them, and they do all of our permit drawings, like all kinds of things. Because what happened is we got such a volume, and then we were getting a bottleneck, not being able to create the designs in-house. So that was a great alternative for us, even though we do have someone here that is able to do it.
Great, thanks for sharing. Sergio, how about you?
Yeah, so that's similar to Jamie. I think so. My first employee, for a few of them, anyways, because I went through quite a few of them first a little bit, was typically somebody who has a graphic designer by trade, but also had a little bit of experience running equipment. I didn't get somebody who can actually do fabrication installations until later, but I need somebody to at least run the basic equipment I had. And then from designing, now I have a full-time designer. I have an ex-full-time designer who's a part-time designer for overflow, and SignPack is also someone I recommend. So they're also somebody I will go out and use for more complicated design stuff. So I use a combination of all three of those. And then, of course, I think also part of the question is about client supplying, their designs. That happens. We like that too, because we work with a lot of marketing agencies and they obviously know their stuff. So that makes our life a lot easier, certainly, when they come with, almost print ready creative. We love that. But we get sort of, hey, we don't know what we want, and we have to design it from scratch, to, hey, I know exactly what I want. Here's it. Execute. So we get a kind of a mixed bag there, but yeah, in-house, outsourcing, sort of combination based on where we're at, what we have in our work in progress.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Sergio. Roger, let's shift to you. You've got a larger team today, so maybe explain a little bit how the team is divided, based on the key roles in the sign company.
Right.
That might be helpful to kind of round this topic out.
Yeah. I started out with a guy who knew it all. I mean, he could run the machines and he could do the art. It was great. And then you start to grow, and then now what we've got is that guy is now in a supervisory position for production. So he supervises the guys who are out there in the CNC machines and the engravers, because he did it on the way up. Okay. At the same time, we have a graphics department that's completely separate from the production side now, and dedicated to the projects that we do. We have about, I would say, 50% of our business is commercial, 50% of our business is multifamily housing, and we have project managers. So I've got a project management division. I've got a creative services division, so to speak. I've got a production system and division for people, and those are clearly delineated. Okay, so we're not crossing across. People are getting it. They're able to focus now on a particular area and work together as a team to bring the project through the various divisions in the door, through customer service and our project managers, through the creative services department, back to production to the installation team. And I forgot, I didn't mention that, but the installation team is critical. It's critical at a certain size, because regardless of how good a job everyone else is doing, that's the last guy to touch the sign before it goes in place. So that's how we run it now.
It's a great comment. And to the last part of the question that Lawrence had, what % of customers on your commercial customers, not multifamily, but commercial customers, come to you with artwork that's pretty set and defined, versus where they don't even know what kind of design they're looking for?
In the beginning, it probably skewed 60-40 for people who didn't know what they wanted to do. Now it skews 60-40 for people who know exactly what they want, typically large B2B customers with logos, with packages that give you the restrictions on the logos and all that, which is very easy. Or much easier than the people who don't know what they want, and that becomes very difficult.
So that's more like the small business owner that you're working, because it's your new business. So you're taking on those smaller projects, versus the corporate projects you work today are much more defined.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jack, any additional comments here?
No, I think you've answered it all pretty well so far. there's a workforce out there. We'll help you find them. We'll help test them. You'll interview them for culture. We'll interview them for skill sets. But there's a workforce out there.
Okay, very good. All right, let's go to our last guest for a question today. Rick, if you can take yourself off of mute, tell the group where you're located and go ahead with the question.
Sure. Rick Goyette. I'm located up here in Rhode Island. And, just as a little background, very new to this process. I talked to Dick just a couple of weeks ago, and it's just something that I'm approaching late career and looking for something different. So I'm exploring some different opportunities. Signage is actually, I have a history with that, and the fact that, my first job in college was operating a field bar press and doing screen printing. Because my mom was in the business, and she went on after that to the company she was with, and she ran her own sign company for 20 years, up until her passing. So a little bit different. She was, and this kind of leads into my question. So she was in a specific area where she was a manufacturer in safety signs and products and things like that. So she had a niche. So my question for all of you is, how did you know what market segments, where you wanted your business to focus when you opened? Rather, did you try to just say, hey, I'm going to cast a wide net and go after a wide assortment business and see what makes me money? Or did you go into it with an idea of, I wanted to go into this segment, this is where I'm going to focus and throw my energies into?
It's a really good question. All right, let's start with our newest owner. Jamie, have you defined any market niches? Tell us a little bit about what kind of customer you focused on in the beginning and where you're focusing today.
Well, just to be quite honest, in the beginning, we were just like, okay, any customer will do. We just want to make sure that we didn't lose our shirt on this investment, right? Which was crazy, but the business was flowing, so don't panic. But we are generalists, is what we say. We have not determined a niche yet. We have chosen not to have a shop minimum as far as the minimum order. We just believe that $150 banner, you never know where that could lead. And we actually have had probably 3 referrals to commercial customers who've done channel letter signs from this lady who ordered a banner from us. So it seems to be working for us so far. We do outsource because we do not have, we didn't invest in anything other than the initial Signworld package, other than the we did the rollover table. But we don't have a bucket truck or a lift or things like that, but we have found some great partners who we are able to sub out those installs. So we do electrical signs, we do all kinds of stuff. And as of right now, we just continue to try to focus on property managers. We've gotten our name in one lease of a large building down on the waterfront that has 10 retail spaces, and the type of signage that owner wanted is a very high-end, like push-through acrylic, and we're thankful to be on the lease as the people that have to provide that sign. So that's the area we're focused on right now, but it doesn't mean that we don't do we did a foam board check, presentation check for somebody not too long ago. I don't know if we'll ever change our strategy, but as of right now, our answer is yes. And then we go from there.
Well, almost approaching $1 million in your second year. You're doing the right thing. So that's great. Thanks, Jamie. Sergio, how about you? What kind of customer did you focus on in the beginning, and has that changed over time?
It was definitely sort of like Jamie. It was trial and error. Take what you can get. It also helped me learn too. So you learn. I know enough to be dangerous from a designer perspective, from fabrication and install. And I did that because I wanted to learn the ins and outs of it. I didn't want to be necessarily an owner operator. That's not sort of where I want to take the business. But it did help me learn. And then, of course, manage my team. I fast forward, I learned pretty quickly, at least in this market, I don't want to be doing car wraps. It's guys are doing it out of the garages and they're driving the pricing down and the margins are nothing. And then there's things like realtors. I realized in this market they're super cheap. And so you learn some things along the way, and they're probably market specific. But right now I do have a minimum, and I have to have one. So my minimum is $1,000, between $500 to $1,000. The reason is, I mentioned probably at the start of this, my overhead's quite high. I have, nearly $6,000 in rent. My payroll's $30 per person per hour. It's quite high.
Oh, Sergio, you muted yourself after you talked about the hour. Sergio?
Whoops.
He's still talking. Sergio. Sergio? We'll wait for him to take a breath here. And
areas that don't have the walk-in, so I'm very lucky.
With that being said, when I do have someone call for something small, I'm not responding. I am responding, and I'm trying to direct them to places like Vistaprint or if there's a sign shop close by that will happily take that work on. I'll do that as a service to them.
Okay, very good. We missed a little bit in the middle there because I think you accidentally muted yourself, but we got the beginning and the end. So I think we got the general gist of what you're sharing. It's okay. Thank you for your response. Roger, how about you? And your business is a little different because you have created a market niche and it's almost a good chunk of your business is focused on that. And you just talked about having focused on that. So maybe talk a little bit about how you started and why you've chosen to go down this path and really focus on a niche.
Okay. In the beginning, it had to be interesting and cool. It had to be something that our skill set could do. And it had to be something we could make money at, you know? And sometimes people with cool projects that are interesting won't allow you to make money at. So, okay, we're not going that direction. Some things are cool, but you don't have the skill set for it, you know? So over, you know, after 6 or 7 years of taking those 3 parameters and trying to figure out what was the sweet spot, we figured out that we like building big, beautiful, illuminated letters and cabinets, and we're good at it. On the other hand, along the way, I found a segment that was pretty cool in that the multi-family housing, you know, once you get in with a developer, it's not like they go and they do another project, because that's what they do. Developers develop. So there's another project. And that project, in all likelihood, will have a big, beautiful, illuminated monument sign at the end of the driveway, letters up on the building, and 350 apartments that you got to put a little bitty sign on that you can get maybe, I don't know, $68 is what we charge for them. But so that became a niche in itself. So the commercial is kind of governed by those 3 parameters that we squeeze together to say yay or nay on a particular project. And over here, we have the luxury of also being able to do big, beautiful illuminated signs and cabinets for this multifamily housing segment. And it's loyal, so we're not recreating, you know, it's not one and done. Sometimes on the commercial side of it, it's one and done. Oh, it's a great project. It's big, beautiful. It's a landmark. I take my kids by it on the way home from the airport. But then they're gone. You know, that's it. You know, they built a big, beautiful headquarters and that's it. And, you know, I'm not hearing from them again. But the thing with the developers is that that's what they do. They develop. And after that project's another project and another project. So I found that has kind of smoothed things out in terms of, you know, recreating your pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Jack, your thoughts?
You know, if all of you that are on the call are thinking about it, you're probably looking at us along with franchises. And there are many good franchises out there, but there's a challenge there in that is typically a very specific product or service to a rather consistent customer base. And if you can pick the right one and the one that you actually love, that's great. But in Signworld, we touch so many different types of customers and we have so many different types of signs that we really believe the best thing to do is be a little bit more generally beginning, be a little bit more flexible, and let the niche come to you over a year or 2. Most Signworld owners, when you ask them what are their sweet spots or niches, either by the type of customer, by the type of project, they will all tell you, I didn't really expect it, but I just found that it fit me after practicing with it a bit. And out of that, they end up long-term happier.
I think it's also sometimes a byproduct of their teams. You know, the people that work for your operation might have, you know, unique skill sets and capabilities or even contacts in different markets where all of a sudden you're now focusing on something you never would have imagined. So I do agree. It's usually a best wait and see approach to see where the business takes you versus have a defined idea. Not that that's a bad idea, but I think the generalist approach is most common. All right, we've got time for probably one more question. So for those on the call today, at the very bottom of your screen, you can click raise hand. The first one who does so will get the chance to ask a second question if we have any out there. And if they don't have one, I'll ask one. Oh, we got one. All right, Lawrence, you did say you had a couple, so time for a second one for you.
This is actually a question I just come up with now. I've really enjoyed this, and I would be very curious to know, since each of you have quite different businesses, what your head count is at this point and after how many years?
Okay, so number of employees and
Yeah.
number of years. Okay, well, actually, I'll add to that because I think most often we associate headcount based on the size of the company, not years in business.
Right.
And I think they did talk about this in the very beginning, but Roger, we'll start with you. How many employees do you have and how much revenue does your business operate with today or generate?
Well, we went from zip to 1.2, 1.5 million, and that took like 6, 7, 8 years. And then we moved into this space and we had room for more people. So we went from 8 to 10 people to 20 people in the next 2 years, and from the 1.2 million to 2 million. So it depends. Do you have the space to fill with the machines and people you need to reach a different level of revenue? And that's sort of what happened to us, you know.
Yeah, it's a manufacturing environment, so your capacity constraints are usually people,
Yeah,
space.
I'm not subbing out a lot of stuff anymore. So
yeah, very good. Jamie, how about you? What's your total revenues and what's your head count, your ideal head count? Because you talked about being down a couple. What would be the ideal head count based on your revenue?
So we just finished our first year in business in November last year, and we hit our goal of $500,000 by $23.67, but we got there. So our goal this year is to double and hit $1 million. We have currently, Ben and I have both always worked in the business, but we have now 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time. We are down. We had to let someone go last 2 weeks ago. That was more of like a front desk, answer the phone, set up site surveys, look through permit requirement or, zoning requirements kind of person. And then we hired a project manager who was supposed to start on Monday, and then they rescinded due to a personal circumstance. So we're actively seeking 2 people to join our team.
So 4 head count total with $1 million target.
Yes.
Okay, very good. How about you, Sergio?
Yeah, so I've got again, I did 800,000 last year, goals $1 million this year. I have 4 full timers. One's a project manager and 2 production, and 1 designer slash pre-press person, if you want to call it as a title. And I have a couple part timers as well. I do need to fill the role. I had a production manager last year. I had to let him go, so I do need to find that so I can be more about the business versus in the business. So I'm wearing a lot of hats. And as far as the capacities go of this unit, it really depends on how much in-house. Right now, I don't think we can do more than $1 million in-house. So that doesn't mean I can't do more than $1 million in the location I'm at. It just means I have to outsource more.
Yeah, very good. Thanks for sharing that. Jack, any closing comments on that question?
The normal model is to do 75% production in-house and 25% subcontracted. We have operations that are 50-50, operations that are 25-75. So it really depends on what you're going after and where your mix is. At a 75-25, you're probably at a 250,000 revenue per employee. At a 50-50, you're probably at a 300,000 per employee. At a 25-75, you're probably at a 350-400,000 gross number, because you're not doing as much of the product yourself. So it really depends on whether you want to control more of it in the back room, or if you want to run more lean and outsource a lot of it. So there's a lot of variables that fall into that number.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I do see we're 1 minute past the hour, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up our session today. So first and foremost, Roger, Sergio, and Jamie, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to share your thoughts, your insights, and your perspectives on the business. We really appreciate you doing so. And to our guests who joined us, thank you for your interest in learning more about Signworld and the industry that we're in. Us from the corporate team look forward to our additional conversations with you in the future to help identify if this is the right next chapter in your lives. But with that, hope everybody has a great rest of your Wednesday. And again, we appreciate you joining our session today. So thank you very much. Have a good one. Take care all. Bye-bye.